now live. We'll get started in just a minute. Assume when we're live, everyone can hear us correct.
Oh, there's Charlie. No way.
Yeah, and hold on too, because right now I don't see it showing up on YouTube, so hopefully he's. There we go. Okay.
We're good.
You normally wait for the red.
There it is. All right. Hopefully everyone can hear me here tonight. Thank you for hanging in there with technology. If there's any commission members that have any challenges, there is a chat button down below. You can send that. Alex is here working, and we will just adjust this as we go. Before we do a call to order officially, again, just we're all going to do our best here tonight. So that being said, we're going to officially call to order the April 21st, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Courtney, would you please take a roll call?
Josh Rabe,
I'm here.
Misty Soldwish,
Here.
Joe Butler, Al Ferris,
Here.
Karen Freeberg,
Here.
Becky Eagles, Bob Ormsby, Jeremy Preble,
Here.
and Sarah Ritchie.
Here.
Courtney, this is Joe. I'm here. I had it on mute. Sorry.
Oh, that's all
Yeah,
right.
and Bob's here too. I think Becky's the only one who's not here, and this might be her right here calling in. Becky, is that you on the phone?
That's Ted Grove.
Okay.
No, Ted Grove, okay. Well,
Becky's the only
we'll
one.
go ahead and move forward. Right now, one thing before we start getting into approval items here, our first few are consensus approval, but as we go through and make motions tonight, it would be helpful if when you make a first or a second, you said your name as well.
Yeah.
That way it's easier for Courtney to track for the minutes. Charlie and I will watch out as well to help, but that would be a nice thing. So first item up here on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Are there any comments from any of the commission members on this? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
This is Joe. I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
Okay, we have a first, we have a second.
I'll second that. This is Misty Soldwish.
Got it. Misty had a second. Alex, is there any way we can turn up some of those, the speakers in here? Some are awfully quiet. Okay, we do have a first and a second. That being said, all those commission members in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
I think at this point, any opposed, like hit on the screen so that we can tell. That might be the best way. I'm not sure. Next item up is the approval of the minutes from March 10th, 2020. I trust everyone has had a chance to review those. Is there any comments or questions on those meeting notes? Okay, if there are none, I would entertain a motion for this item.
Al Ferris, motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting, March 10th.
Perfect. We have a second.
Jeremy Pribble, second.
We have a first and a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Okay, at this time, we will open this meeting for public comment on any items that are not on the agenda. If your item is on the agenda, I'd ask that you hold your comment until that time. If you would like to call in, we do have a number to call in. if you're watching this. That number is 515-961-9448. One more time, 515-961-9448. I am going to say that number a lot tonight, so if you missed it, don't worry. But we will give 1 minute of time real quick to give anybody a chance to call in. Okay, we do not have any calls coming in at this time. We'll move on to the old business item, agenda item A under old business. Consider the recommendation of Elevate Indianola, a comprehensive plan update prepared with the citizens of Indianola. Charlie, will you give us a quick status update recap of exactly where we're at in this process?
Yeah, really quick, I'll go briefly as the commission is more than aware at this point. This is the fourth meeting that the commission has reviewed this item. We had the joint meeting with the council back in January, went through it again in February and again in March. Here we are now in April, going through it, and hopefully this is the last time. We did have various comments after your last meeting that we have passed on to the consultant, and you will see all of these changes in your final draft plan that was linked on the agenda, obviously not included because of the multiple amount of pages, but if you've had a chance to look through that, you'll see all these changes in there. First discussion we had was on the work program and how we go about the work program, if it was on a calendar year or a fiscal year, and then what elements would be included in that work program. The commission ultimately decided that we would do that by the fiscal year. So that is reflective in the draft comp plan. I also did make a note here in your memo that this will also include an ordinance change to the Planning and Zoning Commission section, because we'll need to take care of that as well. And that'll be something that we'll bring forward in the future. Park space was a big discussion. The commission agreed to keep the 16 acres per 1,000 population in the comp plan, but did request that we lower the walking distance to park for every residence from 1/4 of a mile to 1/2 of a mile. On crossing of certain roads through environmentally sensitive areas, we did add an action statement on there. Essentially, we establish a policy to identify ways that the city can be involved in some of these crossings, noting that if the city and developer cannot come to financial terms on something like that, that we then consider cul-de-sacs, other types of roads as an alternative to crossing those creeks. Lastly, a lot of discussion took place on West Orchard and how that would play out. We changed West Orchard to a minor collector. One of the things the commission did ask was to have the consultant look at that and how that would impact the entire transportation network. We did note that eliminating the crossing should mean that there's more traffic on Iowa and Hoover Street. Hoover Street is planned as a major arterial. You'll know that that also is where Willow Crest will meet Highway 65, 69 at some point in the future. The consultant also did note that Iowa Avenue may require some traffic calming measures in the future to keep it functioning as a minor arterial while managing the speed that could be on that road. So those are the changes that were in there. The consultant also did include a memo with all of the changes that have taken place since the last draft plan, and that last draft plan was put together before the joint meeting with council. So most of those changes have come out with the meeting that we've had, all the meetings that we've had this calendar year. Like normal, we noted that state code does lay out this process for the commission to make a recommendation to the city council. City council will have to hold a public hearing on the matter, and if we have this item forwarded to city council tonight, we anticipate that that public hearing would take place at their May 18th meeting. Again, once approved, staff would begin working on the implementation steps outlined in this plan. And we have already done so with some budgeted activities for the FY21 budget. So that's a pretty good quick summary of what we've had in here. I did also include a letter of recommendation from the Parks Board, or the Parks Commission, excuse me, in support of the plan. If there's any additional questions at this point, I would be happy to answer them. And I know Mindy is on here as well too, so I may lean on her for some of the questions as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, at this point, we've had this a few times in front of us. We've made a lot of changes and recommendations. This is, are there any further questions from the commission? Al,
Excuse me?
do you have a question, Al?
Yeah, I do.
I figured.
It's more clarification. On pages 51 through 57, it deals a lot with land use, future land use. And I guess my question is, particularly the map on page 51 that shows future land use, because it's in the plan, does that mean we're really tied to those designations?
No, not necessarily. We've said, I think, all through along those lines aren't meant to be static, first of all, so there can be interpretations where there's boundaries around there. The second point I would make is that this is a very fluid document. There is going to be a process implemented to where there can be amendments made to the land use plan. And at the same time, text that's in this comprehensive plan. I think we recognize that as we move through the next few years that things change and we need to operate this as a fluid document. So there could be changes in the future, but there will be processes in place to make those changes.
I also, I'm guessing, I understand, I believe that, for example, the designations of land use density on page 3, that in the future there will be changes to zoning categories to reflect the use. Is that right?
Yeah, so one of the, I mentioned the budgeted activities. We do have some budgeted funds for an update to our zoning ordinance, and that zoning ordinance would be built off whatever the adopted comprehensive plan is. So we would come up with some zoning designations. I can't tell you exactly how that would look now because those are things that we'll have to go through here in the next few months to a year, most likely. But yeah, you'll have minimum lot sizes that are built off of that, possibly densities that are built off that in the zoning districts.
Okay, thank you. I just trying to get it clear in my own mind.
Thanks,
I
Al.
only have one other question, and that concerns the table that is on page 70. And it basically talks about income range, ability to purchase property, property values at the present time, and whether or not there's excess or deficiency in certain kinds of property. I guess I'm a little surprised that we're so blessed with an abundance of property that's under $200,000 to the point of being in we have excess of 1,877 properties. Is this normal, or is it just unique to Indianola?
Mindy, if you're there, I'll actually punt that to you since I know you deal with a few more communities. I deal with mainly Indianola here, so I don't know if you have an answer for that, but
I don't know. I don't know that I can say if it's normal or not normal. We've also recently done a comp plan for Jasper County, and they actually came up somewhat similar to this, where they had kind of an abundance of housing available for lower income and needed more higher income. But it's going to be, city to city, place to place. I'd have a hard time saying something's normal or not normal when it comes to that. It's just going to be unique to each community.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mindy. Does anybody else have any questions or comments at this time from the commission? Okay. I guess at this point, if there's no further comments or questions, if everyone is feeling pretty good about this, we could entertain a motion to on this item. Just a reminder, I can't make a motion. It has to come from one of you guys.
Do we want to make a motion, something along the lines of with the changes that they, obviously we've put a lot of changes and recommendations together. How do you think the best way, and Charlie, I'll ask you, how's the best way to address our emotion?
Yeah, what I would say is the latest draft plan that is on our website that was essentially linked in your packet, it includes all of the changes that we have discussed to date. So I think the motion, if you're looking to have all those changes, would be just adopting a recommendation to adopt the current draft comprehensive plan. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this is Al Ferris. I would like to move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the City Council adoption of the Elevate Indianola Comprehensive Plan as updated and prepared and presented to us.
Al, we have a first. Do we have a second?
I second that motion. This is Sarah Ritchie.
Thank you, Sarah. We have a first and a second on this to adopt the latest draft. Is there any further discussion or comments before we go to a roll call vote here? Charlie?
Becky, are you on the line now? I know we have another phone number on here. I just want to make sure that you're here.
Okay. Perfect. So any further comment? Courtney, would you mind taking a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Misty Soldwich,
Yes.
Joe Butler,
Yes.
Al Ferris,
Yes.
Aaron Freeberg,
Yes.
Bob Ormsby, Jeremy Preble,
Yes.
Sarah Ritchie,
Yes.
Josh Reed.
Yes.
Hey, Bob, we can't hear you, so I'm assuming you said yes. If you did, give a thumbs up. Perfect. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Perfect. Thank you guys, everybody. That was a lot of work. Mindy, thank you for all your work on this as well. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Mindy.
Moving on, under new business, agenda item A, consider recommendation on request from Brent K. Culp of Snyder and Associates, Inc. for approval of preliminary plat for Tree Line Plat 1. We have all received public comment on this one. It was in our packets. One from, am I reading this right? It was from David Davis. Charlie's included that for all of us. Charlie, can you give us a rundown on this one, please?
Yeah, really quick. This subdivision, it's preliminary plat. We have reviewed this at the staff level. We also did send it over to Fox Engineering to look at. Since this subdivision was done by Snyder and Associates, we used their secondary contract with Fox to review it. It is a 29 lot residential subdivision, 25 single family with 4 duplex lots that will be located along Iowa Avenue. It does include North 7th Court being extended to the south that will terminate in a cul-de-sac just north of Iowa Avenue, and it also does extend Kentucky Avenue to the east for a hopeful future connection of Kentucky to be completed through this property and the property to the east. Give me a second as I scroll through here on my screen, because I know as it is a subdivision, we have a lot of code sections in there. The proposed development provides an average density of about 4.1 units per acre, with four two-family lots providing the density of 5.97, and the 25 single-family lots providing a density of 3.91 units per acre. We have included the review comments that were submitted to Snyder and Associates on our first review and their response as well. A few things that came up through that review: the minimum depth to lot ratio was not met on lots 26A, 26B, 27A, and 27B, for the townhome lots. In response, the applicant has requested a variance to that section to allow the depth to width that they are proposing. The other issue was, since the property to the east does have some industrial zoning on the south portion of that lot, it does touch about the south 85 feet of the rear of lot 14. The buffer standards do apply since it's a residential to industrial use. We did note that the City Council reserves the right to waive or modify to a lesser restriction of any provision or requirement of the buffers upon a recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Commission. There's a little bit more text in there, but what I will say is that property to the east is planned in our comprehensive plan, both our current one and the one that you did recommend this evening, as a residential use. So future uses of that would not require a buffer. We also do note that there is extensive existing vegetation and trees within this buffer range. And when you see the preliminary plat that was included in the packet, it does show which of those trees are going to be retained and saved to serve as a buffer on here. So with that, we do recommend that a modification to that requirement for the buffer also be approved. And with that, we are recommending approval overall with conditions, and those conditions are that the council does adopt the variance to the maximum depth to width ratio, and also a modification to section 170.04, approving the existing trees to serve as the buffer yard. So with that, if there are any additional questions, I would be happy to answer them.
This is Bob Worm speaking. Anybody hear me now?
Yep.
Well, I was on the phone for the audio and I got off it and got on, so I think I'm sat down. Charlie, I was just one question about the trees. Does this require then the future owners of these properties maintain those trees? Do they have any right to take any of them out, or how does that work?
The way that it is shown on the plat, it's just showing which trees that the developer is going to maintain. There is not a buffer yard easement that was associated with the plat. Of course, the commission can recommend that we put that on there. However, from our recommendation, we weren't recommending that just because the future land use of that property does show it as residential, and I would assume that that's going to continue. Hopefully at some point that property does develop out. But again, if that's something that the commission would like to see on the plat, that buffer yard included on there to protect those trees, that can be part of the recommendation.
Yeah, my only concern would be that southeast corner where the industrial area is. We get maintained.
Yeah, and we also know what use is taking place on there, and it's not, I mean, it's a tree care business, and there's some storage of some RVs that take place there during the winter. So it's not too intensive in an industrial use. So because of that, I'm more comfortable with it as well. But again, if the commission is more comfortable with the buffer being placed there, or the easement being placed there, again, that's in here for you to do.
Charlie, this is Joe Butler. A couple questions. Can you give the commission a general idea? I understand it's not an intensive industrial use now, but what types of uses could go in to that parcel in the future?
Yep, give me 1 second here and I will, if you have another question, go ahead with that. Let me pull the zoning ordinance up here on my screen so I can get that answered for you.
The other question I had is lots 27A and B, 26A and B. Those are the duplex lots, correct?
They're along Iowa Avenue. They're the duplex lots, yeah.
Yeah. Is a side yard setback on those 8 feet? Do I remember that correctly?
I believe
8 or 10.
So, but again, let me, as I'm pulling the zoning ordinance up here, that is another thing I will check.
The reason I asked this question is they're only 42 and 43-foot wide lots. And if we're talking duplexes on those lots, you take side yard out of them, you're down to 26 feet, 27 feet, something like that, of buildable square footage, and then to put a duplex on it. I'm just wondering if there's been any direction on what type of units are looking to go in there.
Yeah, so but on the duplex lots, the side would only be on the one side, so that that middle line, so between 26A and 26B, that middle line is a 0 lot line.
So it's actually a duplex on lot 27AB.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
Okay.
So typically how that's platted, it might just be one lot when we get the final plat, lot 26, 27. And then when they put the duplexes in, a lot of times they'll come do an as-built survey to find out exactly where the center of that is and then divide those off. The applicant might speak to that a little bit more on how exactly they plan on doing that, but that's pretty typical with what we see.
That makes
really
sense.
quick, going back to the M1 zoning district, farm implement displays, sales and service, wholesaling and warehousing, manufacturing and processing, truck and freight terminals, animal hospitals, kennels and vet offices, truck displays, sales, repair and storage, welding and repair shop, railroads and public utilities, lumberyard and building materials sales and storage, plumbing, heating, air conditioning, sheet metal shops, a frozen food locker, appliance repair and servicing, contractor's office, business offices, self-storage units, and student housing for school and training facilities. So those are the M1 uses. As far as the R3 setbacks on duplexes,
It's got the 8 foot on each side of the building, isn't it?
on each, yeah, it would be on each side of the building, but again, you'll have that 0 lot line. The way that this plat shows it is it's showing one lot for each of the duplexes. So for each single family in there, but it's one combined building on 2 lots.
Right.
That makes sense. That clears up the setback one. I bring up the future use. There are very few parcels in town that have this zoning, and I could see it as being potentially redeveloped in the future. And correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, but if we waive the buffer now and a more intensive use goes in there in the future, there's no burden on the more intensive use to put that burden in or put that buffer in.
There would be through our current site planning standards, if we get a new site plan for a new industrial use that goes in there, the buffer yards do kick in on the site planning standards as well. So there could be a requirement for that industrial user to put that buffer in on the established residential.
Okay.
I do believe if there's any other questions, we have Brent Culp on the line as well. If there's any questions for the representative from Snyder as well. And Ted is here as well on the phone. Gotcha. That's right. Ted's on the numbers down there. If nobody, any last minute questions here before I open up for public comment, commission members? Choppy on my screen. Okay. At this time, we're going to open up this issue for public comment. Again, the number for that is 515-961-9448. Anybody from the public is free to call in. There's a phone right here for Courtney to answer, and we will all hear it. 515-961-9448. We'll give it about a minute here for the phone to ring.
You want to ask?
Yeah, in the room as well. Is there anybody in the room that would like to make a comment on this as well? There are a few folks joining us here on this agenda item. If you would mind coming forward to this podium, state your name and address.
Yeah. I'm Ross Dale at 615 East Scenic Valley Avenue. In regard to your density number, and this is an R3 district, is that correct? Yes. So are there minimums on units per acre
We don't have minimums built into our zoning ordinance. Our comp plan does have standards built in there, but those aren't regulatory standards. Those are more recommendations built into a comprehensive plan. But we have minimum lot sizes in our zoning ordinance. We don't have minimum density standards in our zoning ordinance.
Can you answer at what point are those lot dimensions measured? Are they at the street? Or it's not really defined in the ordinance?
Yeah,
At
so
what point is
typically,
measured?
what happens with subdivisions in cities is the streets lots will be separate lots. So you'll have the right of way, depending on the width of the road, 26 or 31 foot plus some additional right of way outside of that. Typically it's around 70 feet of right of way. There'll be a separate lot that's surveyed out and then dedicated to the city. So those lots are measured at the front of the lot line, typically 1 foot from the sidewalk. And I say typically because that's not uniform throughout the city, but mostly it's about 1 foot back from the sidewalk. No, not too far from the street typically. It just depends on where the street is and how much right away.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Someone's doing their second, I think, while we're going. There's no public comment any further this time. Commission members, if you have any other questions or comments, this would be your opportunity. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion on this if there's no further discussion.
This is Misty Soldwish, and I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend the preliminary plat of Tree Line Plat 1 be approved as submitted.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Bob Ormsby, I'll second.
And really quick, I'm going to jump in. There was the 2 conditions we had to approve, the variances on those. Or is that part of your motion, Misty?
Yes, with the variances recommended.
Yep. Bob, you caught that. You're good.
I am.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? We're gonna keep on moving. Courtney?
Joe Butler,
Yes.
Al Ferris,
Yes.
Karen Freeberg,
Yes.
Bob Ormsby,
Yes.
Jeremy Preble,
Yes.
Sarah Ritchie,
Yes.
Josh Rave,
Yes?
Misty Soldwish.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Next item, consider recommendation on request from John F. and Mary Helen Peterson for an annexation into the city of Indianola. Charlie?
No, I asked Josh this. I know annexations are something that the commission has not reviewed since I've been here. And I don't think we've had an annexation in the city for a while. So hopefully the staff report explains a lot of that really well. But again, if there's any questions on this after we're done, just please feel free to ask. Again, this request is for annexation into the city of about 70 acres of land, generally located south of Inwood Street, west of 110th Avenue, that also turns into North Y Street as it enters the city, and east of County Highway R63. The applicant has indicated to us through various meetings that if this is annexed, it would be developed residentially. City Council does have a policy on annexations. Pretty much their policy states all requests for voluntary annexation shall be referred to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Trustees for their recommendation and report to the City Council. The Board of Trustees did review this request last week, and we do have their comments in this staff report. And tonight is the night that the Planning and Zoning Commission is reviewing this. We also do have one section of code that talks about new areas annexed into the city, essentially that the Planning and Zoning Commission, as part of their report, needs to recommend a zoning district that would be placed on this land if it is ultimately annexed. So as part of your recommendation, if you are recommending approval, would be to also decide what zoning district it would be on, or in, excuse me. On February 25th, we did receive the application for annexation. We did forward that to the City Council on March 25th. City Council did ask staff to forward this on to both the Commission and the Board of Trustees for its review. Annexations, not too much built into our code, but there is a lot of text on annexations in state code that we are required to follow. One of the things we did want to point out on this is that this is considered a voluntary annexation. There's two types of annexations, obviously voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary is an annexation where the property owner is requesting to be annexed into the city. The city is not forcing the annexation. But with the voluntary annexation by state code, we can bring additional territory of land comprising not more of 20% of the area to be included in the entire annexation in. That is done mainly to make sure that the city can keep uniform boundaries and not create any islands of land that would not be annexed inside the city. So I want to make sure that the commission is aware of that. You'll see one of the things we did ask when this applicant first started communicating with the city last year, actually, we did ask them to look at some of the additional areas that are outside of their property and talk with those property owners to see if there would be any additional interest in annexation, mainly because we wanted to make sure that we had some uniform boundaries. So in the staff report, I marked those areas as area 1 and area 2 and gave what those sizes are. Ultimately, the applicant did speak with those property owners. They ultimately said that they would not like to be annexed into the city for various reasons. That area and the area in number 1, those houses there that are off to the west, that property owner owns one of those houses. You'll probably know that the tax rate for a single family inside the city of Indianola is about 10 cents higher per thousand than it is when you're out in Warren County. So because of that, just on the increase of taxes, they asked not to be annexed at this time because of the effect it would have on their residents. The property owner in number 2 just was not interested at all in annexation and not too open to the idea at all. So we didn't really go too much further than that on that one. So knowing all of that, we do have an application that we are looking at here on this piece of ground. That does include a farmstead that's on there, but again, the application does not include annexation of that farmstead on there. Again, with that 20% rule, we could bring that farmstead in. The one thing I would note, though, is we have an abundance of ground north of here that we could also bring that farmstead in on. So one of the things I would tell the commission when you're looking at this application to decide on is, do you want the uniform boundaries, not to annex around that farmstead essentially? Are you okay with the more ununiform boundaries, knowing that we can bring that farmstead in at some point in the future? Our recommendation was to leave it out at this point, again, knowing that we have an abundance of land north of here, that we can bring that farmstead in and it's not going to hinder us in any future annexations. Also gave some notes here on the sanitary. There's various points within a vicinity of this subdivision that the property owner could connect to on sanitary. There was an option to connect to a manhole to the east of here that could be gravity fed. However, that property owner to the east of here was not interested in giving any easements for a sanitary line, so that fell through. We did note that there is a manhole at the corner of Y Street and Euclid. Ultimately, if we were to connect to that one, it would require a lift station because that manhole is actually higher than this piece of ground. So we would not be able to gravity feed this piece of property off that manhole. The Utility Board of Trustees did review this last week at its April 13th meeting. 3 notes that they had was it's not located in their electrical territory. It is located in Mid-America's electrical territory. They did note that there is a 12-inch water main that is at the intersection of Y Street and West Euclid. If that water main is to be extended, that would have to be at the cost of the developer, not the cost of IMU. And due to the number of homes that could possibly be taking place in this area if annexed, additional fiber infrastructure would have to be installed and extended to this area. Density and take rate on construction factor into decisions on timing of upgrading of fiber infrastructure. However, there is a lot of areas planned currently on here, and IMU did note that the soonest they could probably get fiber out into this area would be in 2023. Looking at the zoning district, comprehensive plan does designate this as low density residential, which is about 1 to 4 dwelling units per acre. We looked at some of the surrounding zoning districts out in this area. Pretty much everything from Kenwood to the west is zoned R1. So to try to keep with uniform zoning district boundaries, we do recommend that the R1 zoning district be placed on here if this is ultimately approved. I think that covers everything that we had in the staff report. If there are any questions of the commission, I'd be happy to answer them at this time. And I know we do have 2 of the applicants on the meeting here as well. So if you have any questions of them, now would be the time to ask.
Anybody have any questions on this one, Charlie? We did also get one, just as a point, I did not bring it up before Charlie started. We did get one letter of public comment, and everyone should have that emailed to them prior to the meeting, from Matt and Jessica Sandford.
And to note, that is that property that this annexation surrounds on 3 sides.
The one that we've excluded, that has been excluded at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, if there's no questions for the commission at this point, I'll open this up for public comment. Again, if you're in the room. Also, while we're getting going here, the number is 515-961-9448 to call in. Anybody in the room want to speak on this one at all? Okay. We'll give it someone calling in.
That's somebody on.
That's someone else's line.
I apologize. That's Al Ferris. Somebody wants a FaceTime with my wife, which I said.
Thanks, Al. We're all figuring out technology here. One last time, we got a little bit longer here on public comment. 515-961-9448. At this point, if there's no public comment, commission members, last chance for any commentary or question before we move forward.
This is Bob Wormsby. Charlie, what in the future would prompt us to want to force annexation on that property?
I'll tell you right now, not too many cities in this state force annexation onto properties. The involuntary annexation laws that are written in Iowa code are really favor the property owner if that's the case. It gives you time limits on when you have to have utilities extended and all of that stuff from a city's perspective. So again, the involuntary annexations or the forced annexations rarely happen in this state. I could look it up, but I know I get development board agendas when they come out, and it seems like there's maybe 2 or 3 every year in the state, so not too many. The other thing I would say on that, you know, we're not really, we're open to development, obviously, but we're mainly looking at development when a landowner or a developer comes forward with it, and that's what's happening in this case. We did not reach out to this property owner. This property owner reached out to us and asked what the process would be to develop this piece of property. Noting that it was in the county, we do have subdivision review within the 2-mile area of the city. We noted to them that we would probably say no to any subdivision unless it was located in the city. So to do that, they have to request the annexation. So again, long-winded, I'm sorry, but I don't think there's going to be really any case from, at least from a planning standpoint, that we would ever force an annexation from the city. We mainly will wait for somebody to request that.
Thank you.
Hey, Charlie, Aaron Freeberg. I just have a question on is there a timeline on if the property gets annexed that progress has to happen on it?
No, there's
not.
No, go ahead.
No, you finish, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, no, there's nothing that we have. You know, we have a lot of ground inside this city that is bare farm ground at this point, that is just agricultural ground. A lot of the stuff out by Wilder School, I couldn't think of the name. Wilder School, everything south of that's located inside the city, but it's all farmed right now. So yeah, there's no timelines or no sunsets on that.
Okay, thanks.
And I don't know if that was the one part of the public comment that came in to was addressing, you know, what happens, you know, the financial capability of the developer, which obviously we don't ever ask for. But the one thing I would note, if there's ever a fear of, hey, the development starts, gets halfway done, and then developer walks away, that's why typically the city has bonds in place on developers. So if those improvements don't take place and lots are platted, we can finish those improvements and pull the bond that the developers placed on there. So we do have safeguards in place for something like that, but hopefully, you know, any bank that's going to loan money on this will know that they have the capability of finishing it themselves.
Right. Like there's another step to the process.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, on this, if this does ultimately get annexed, you know, we have to go through a subdivision process to subdivide the ground. So there's a whole nother review process that would take place.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Aaron. Any further comments or questions? Seeing or hearing none, I would entertain any motions that the commission wants to bring forward.
This is Jeremy. I'll make a motion to make a recommendation that annexation be requested as approved, as submitted, an R1 single family residential zoning district or another district be assigned.
Jeremy. First to the second.
I second. This is Sarah Ritchie.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, we have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? Courtney?
Al Ferris,
Yes.
Aaron Freeberg,
Yes.
Bob Ormsby,
Yes.
Jeremy Preble,
Yes.
Sarah Ritchie,
Yes.
Josh Rabe,
Yes.
Mitzi Soldwish,
Yes.
and Joe Butler.
Yes.
Okay, next item on the agenda, thank you everybody. Consider recommendation on request from Edward H. Arp of Civil Engineering Consultants, Inc. to rezone a parcel of land in the northeast quarter of the southeast quarter and the southeast quarter of the northeast quarter of section 36, township 76 north, range 24 west of the 5th prime meridian, city of Indianola, Iowa, from A1 agricultural zoning district to A2 mixed agricultural zoning district. Charlie.
Who comes up with those agenda titles?
Oh my goodness.
Really quick, I'm not going to go too in depth on this one. I know everybody on the commission was a part of this request. Was it last year? I think it was last October. I don't know the exact date. I apologize for that. As the developer and landowner have continued to look at this request and the site plan for the campground, they did identify that they needed a little bit more area to the east of the ground that was rezoned last year, an additional 100 feet. That is what this request is looking at. All conditions of the last rezoning are exactly the same on this one, just a little bit of additional ground that needs to take place. With that, like we said last time, if this is ultimately approved, there is still a site plan that needs to be reviewed at the staff level. And we will look at utilities and all of that stuff associated with that. So I'm not gonna spend too much time on this one, but if there's any additional questions on this rezoning, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Charlie. Anybody have any comments or questions on this one? Okay, if I don't have any just yet, I will open this up for public comment. Again, the phone number is, you guys are all gonna have this memorized by the end of the night, 515-961-9448. Is there anybody in the room here that would like to make public comment on this one? Okay. Seems like we're probably A-okay on this one now as well. Last chance for questions or comments before we entertain a motion here, Commission. All right, I would entertain a motion on this agenda item.
This is Joe Butler. I will move to approve the rezoning request as submitted.
Misty Soldwish, second.
With a second. We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Courtney?
Aaron Freeberg,
Yes.
Bob Ormsby,
Yes.
Jeremy Preble,
Yes.
Sarah Ritchie,
Yes.
Josh Rabe,
Yes.
Misty Soldwich,
Yes.
Joe Butler,
Yes.
and Al Ferris.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda. We're on D, right? Okay. Consider recommendation on request from Jeffrey A. Gaddis of Civil Engineering Consultants, Inc. for approval of a plat of survey for a parcel of land in the northeast quarter of the southeast quarter of the southeast quarter of the northeast quarter of Section 36, Township 76 North, Range 24 west of the 5th Prime Meridian, City of Indianola. Charlie.
This one is related to the last request and was actually what prompted us to go through the last request. You'll see there's two parcels as part of this plat of survey. Parcel Q is going to be deeded off to the campground developer, and parcel R will be retained by the family trust on this one. And there are no future plans for parcel R at this point. Parcel Q, obviously, if we ultimately approve it, would be part of the campground. So this one's pretty straightforward. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? All right, public comment. Is there anybody in the room or on the phone? Again, 515-961-9448. I feel comfortable that we're going to move this one forward. Last chance for comments from the commission or questions. Courtney? Oh, wait, do I still do a motion? I'm getting ahead of myself. I got too many papers up here. I need a motion, please, guys. I'm doing it all wrong here. Anybody would like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, this is Al Ferris. I would move approval of the plat of survey as requested.
Joe Butler, second.
Joe Butler with a second. Now, Courtney, thank you.
All right, Bob Ormsby,
Yes.
Jeremy Preble,
Yes.
Sarah Ritchie,
Yes.
Josh Rabe,
Yes.
Misty Soldwich,
Yes.
Joe Butler,
Yes.
Al Ferris,
Yes.
and Aaron Freeberg.
Yes.
Okay, now we're to the next item. Consider recommendation on request from Josh Moulton of DR Horton for approval of a proposed development plan and to rezone a parcel of land in the southeast quarter of the southwest quarter of Section 18, Township 76 North, Range 23 west of the 5th Prime Meridian, City of Indianola, Iowa, from R3 mixed residential zoning district to R5 planned residence district. And just Charlie might comment on some of this, but before we get too far into it, we've all received multiple emails and correspondence from the public on this one. Everyone has those. They've all been emailed to all of us, and I trust everyone's had a chance to review those. Charlie, do you want to give us any background on this request?
Yeah, quick. The first thing I'm going to do is explain the R5 zoning district, because we've had a few questions come up on this. So the R5 is the planned residence zoning district. It's similar to what is commonly referred to as a PUD in a lot of communities, a planned unit development. What that zoning district does is it allows some flexibility in design for the developer to come up with that better meets their needs. So while mostly it looks at and allows the same uses that are allowed in the R3 zoning district with some modifications, you'll see in the language there that actually commercial is allowed in the R5 if it is outlined in the plan. And again, this plan does not show any commercial use, but again, if that is something that would be showing up in their plan, it is something that is allowed. So, but again, it forces them to come up with a plan that they would develop off of. So that plan is included in your packet. There's a lot of details in on that plan, and then we have some general comments from the staff level on that plan as well. So again, the request is to rezone approximately 17.7 acres of land currently in the R3 zoning district to the R5 zoning district. You would be approving a development plan for the proposed R5 residence districts to facilitate a proposed future development of a 73-lot single-family residential subdivision. This land is located out in the Summercrest Hills area. It is generally located between the Vintage Hills area and the Quail Meadows, the Quail Meadows subdivision. You'll see it's that vacant piece of farm ground there on the north side of Hillcrest. Looking at this, again, the staff report, attached to the staff report was the development plan. In summary, the development plan does propose a 73-lot subdivision, requires that lots be a minimum of 50 feet wide and at least 5,000 square feet inside. The plan does not provide any landscaping standards. However, the statement of intent of the zoning district does look for landscaping standards. The proposed single-family residential lots and homes would vary in sizes, floor plans, and front elevations according to the plan. The bulk standards for this subdivision, it does call for detached homes with a minimum of 2-car attached and detached garages. Again, minimum lot width of 50 feet at the front yard setback, 5,000 square foot lot minimum. The minimum yard requirements would be 25 foot front setbacks, 25 foot rear setbacks. On the side, it would be 10 feet total, so 5 foot on each side of the house. So we talked about side setback here just a little bit ago. It's not 10 feet from each house to the lot line. It's 10 feet between the two structures, so 5 foot setbacks on the side. They do note that there is no screening required and that R3 zoning regulations would apply to items not covered in the report that they submitted. When we're looking at the third standard and requirement noted above in the staff report that's included in the R5 zoning district, it does state that variations in yard requirements, lot area, height required, so on in the R3 district may be approved for the planned residence district. However, the minimum wards around the boundaries of the R5 district shall not be less than that required of the R3 district. So there are some lots, again, when you look at the outside boundary of this subdivision, what that is saying is any lot that touches that outside boundary needs to meet the minimum lot size requirement of the R3 zoning district and the minimum lot width of the R3 zoning district. Looking at that, the minimum setbacks for single family dwellings in the R3 zoning district are 25 feet in the front and 30 in the rear. Again, this proposal was calling for 25 feet in the front, but also 25 feet in the rear. So on those lots that touch the outside boundary, they would have to be 30 feet in the rear and then 8 feet minimum on each side or 16 feet total between the lots. So again, that's what the R5 district calls for on those lots that touch the outside. It also says that the minimum lot size has to be 7,200 square feet as opposed to 5,000 square feet. I believe they meet all those minimum lot sizes on the west side of their development, but on the east side, there's quite a few that are under that 7,200. And then I think everything on the north and south side was okay as well. Total number of dwelling units allowed for the parcel using the R3 minimum lot size would be 107 lots, or about 6.05 units per acre. This development proposes 73 lots, or 4.12 units per acre. That's referring to, again, a regulation that states that the maximum allowed density in the R3 district cannot be exceeded by the R5 plan. That does not happen because, again, the maximum allowed density would be that 107 lots. And that code does point out that that does include roads, parks, any detention areas and stuff like that. It does look at a gross density as opposed to a net density. Last thing we pointed out in that section was there are no planned parks located on this parcel. Our comp plan doesn't show any planned parks on this parcel. Both the recently recommended comp plan and the current comp plan. This site does propose an 8-inch sanitary sewer gravity main throughout the development. The southern approximately 2/3 of this property can be serviced by existing sanitary gravity mains that are in place. The northern, about 1/3 of this will need to flow to the new Quail Meadows lift station that is currently under construction. And we outlined that when the Quail Meadows 3 and 4 subdivision was approved. This development does show an 8-inch water line proposed throughout the site. It does propose an extension of 7th Street going north to south, connecting to the recently approved Quail Meadows subdivision to the north and to Hillcrest Avenue on the south. It also does propose a connection of East Scenic Valley Avenue, where it's currently stubbed in on both the east and west sides of this development. With that, staff is recommending that the commission move alternative 2, which would be approving the rezoning request and the development plan with the following conditions. A, that the development plan be updated to show the minimum setbacks of 25 feet in the front, 30 in the rear, and 8 feet on each side. Plus a minimum lot area of 7,200 square feet for the lots adjacent to the boundaries, adjacent to the boundaries of the existing lot, and that the development plan be updated to include landscaping standards that will be included for each lot, as well as perimeter landscaping that would be included along the south side of this development. One other thing we did want to point out after this staff report was published, and in some of the communications we had with the developer on some issues, it was pointed out that this development would possibly be proposing slab on grade homes. So with that, I'll let the applicant speak to that a little bit more in depth, because I know that there was some variation on that and some factors that were playing into it. But with that, that might be also something that we want to include as a recommendation to be mentioned in their development plan on, what lots would be slab on grade, or that some of them might be slab on grade. So that concludes everything I think I have in the staff report. And if there are any questions from members of the commission, I'd be happy to answer them.
Charlie, real quick before we get to questions, do we have anybody here or on the phone that's representing this one right now?
The applicant?
Yes.
Yeah, Brandon Stubbs, I believe, was on there a little bit ago.
Yes.
So.
Okay.
Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure we had you in case we have some questions for you. Thanks, Brandon.
Yep.
All right, commission, anybody want to kick us off here?
I got a question for Charlie. Charlie says, Jeremy, is there like, when you're doing a rezoning like this, when you're going from R3 to R5, is there any precedent that's previously been set? Like if you have an abnormal kind of looking lots that I can see where you maybe want to do a little bit more planning, but to me, this seems like it's a pretty, it's basically a rectangle. So I guess, is there a precedence on why we would move to an R5 when this is a designated R3?
And I would ask the developer maybe to jump in on this one a little bit too, but from my understanding of it, one of the reasons is just with the narrowness of this lot and trying to get, the appropriate uses in here, that is one of the reasons, you essentially got to get, you're either going to have really long lot, narrow lots that are really long, or you're going to have to get 2 roads to kind of have that stacking of the 4 lots across this. So that might be one of the reasons it was done. As far as precedents being set in the R5 district, we do have some R5. The Heritage Hills area I know is all zoned R5. Looking around, Al and I had a conversation on this yesterday, and we were kind of looking around at some other areas in the city to see if we got down to lot sizes that, were in that 5,000 square foot range. We weren't able to really find any. So this type of lot size I know is something that, we probably don't have anything in the city. But, when we look at the total density out in this area, first of all, the density proposed in this development does meet the density standards that are in our comp plan. But one thing I did today, I looked at is kind of what the total density for this area would be out here. So I'm looking at the Quail Meadows 1 and 2 subdivisions, the Quail Meadows 3 and 4 subdivisions. We have the Quail Meadows townhomes, the Summercrest duplexes along East Scenic Valley. I also looked at what Scenic Trails and Vintage Hills are as far as density. I'm not going to use those because those numbers are way up there just because of the type of housing they provide. But when you look, what we currently have out there, we're at about 2.33 units per acre. When you then build this subdivision into that entire area, that number goes from 2.33 to 2.74 units per acre. So you're still around that same number. Obviously, the density does go up just a little bit because this particular subdivision is a little bit more dense. But you'll recall with Quail Meadows 3 and 4, the density of that subdivision that we approved was 1.85 units per acre. Those lots were a little bit more large lots with higher end homes that were going to be placed on them. So it's, we're looking at striking a balance, I think, here with this particular subdivision and we're getting that good density out of this. So again, while this particular subdivision will provide a density of the 4.12 units per acre. Quail Meadows 1 and 2 was 2.2 units per acre. Quail Meadows 3 and 4 is 1.85 units per acre. So, you're striking that balance and getting that good average density throughout this entire area.
Charlie, this is Al Ferris. I'm a little confused about the 5,000 square foot minimum because, and I admit the size of the map that I got stretches beyond the power of my trifocals. So I had to get my high-tech magnifying glass out and looked at it. But I don't see any of the lots that are proposed that are below 6,000 square feet. So why would the minimum be set at 5,000 square feet?
And now you're forcing me to look at these a little bit more.
I had that same question out because I didn't notice any under 6,000 myself.
And if
can I jump in there on this?
Commission wants, I'll defer to Brandon on that one to answer.
Sure. So that's just to be conservative in case some funky shaped lot, it has double frontage, or if we end up getting an easement through a lot and we have to push one over, then we might have something less than 6,000 square feet. But what we have shown is what we're planning on moving forward with. And like you said, there is nothing less than 6,000 square feet as we have shown. It's just to be conservative in case something happens in the review process through the preliminary plat or the construction plans where we have to tweak a lot here or there. But like Charlie said, everything on the east and west is going to have to be over 7,000 square feet. And then we have 6,000 on all the interior. So our average lot size is probably in that 6,500 square feet. That's what we have shown.
Okay, thank you. For Charlie, if we were to approve this with that 5,000 square foot minimum in there, wouldn't this in effect be setting a new lower minimum lot size for the future?
I mean, you have to look at everything on a case-by-case basis, in my opinion. So I get what you're saying on that, now the next R5 development that comes in and they want to go to a smaller lot size.
You approve it once, you'll be expected to approve it again.
Yeah. And, again, I think, you look at everything on a case-by-case basis. On this one, again, you're dealing with a pretty narrow parcel to begin with. When you look at what the actual Summercrest preliminary plat pointed out in 2015 was, it was hard to get the R3 standards to work on this lot for single family. Again, as the commission's aware, the R3 does allow for multifamily as well. So the proposal on that 2015 preliminary plat showed a lot of multifamily apartment units located along Hillcrest and then within this subdivision as well. So that was mainly because, again, under the R3 standards, it was really hard to make R3 work single family within this development. So the developer had to get creative on this one, kind of look at what the road layout was going to be and how the lots worked into that road layout. Because of that, we needed some more narrow lot sizes and smaller lot sizes to make that work. So that's what we're looking at on this one. So again, I don't think we're necessarily setting precedents because, again, you have to look at every parcel on a case-by-case basis. Now, if you get another parcel that's only 645 feet wide, sure, you have to look at that at the same standard. But if you get a parcel that has, it's thousands of feet wide, at that point, it's a little bit easier to make those lot sizes work.
Charlie, is there anything preventing us from making a recommendation that includes larger than 5,000 square feet of
No, again, the development plan that's in front of us, you can modify it as you see fit on there. You know, it's up to the applicant at that point to, here's the commission's recommendation to council. Council, you know, at that point, the applicant can make the argument to keep the 5,000 or go to the 6,000 as the commission. So no, there's absolutely nothing in there to stop you from modifying what's in that development plan on your recommendation.
Charlie, do we have any idea what the landscaping standards and the landscaping being proposed is? I mean, it appears the intent of planned unit development is you're providing some betterments to the development that would normally not be required in a certain zoning, you know, with the idea that you're getting back some, you know, you're relaxing on some requirements, you know, it's kind of like a give and take almost. It feels like, you know, there's some incentive, you know, for them to take this, but they have to provide something back to better the situation. Do we have any indication of what's going to be proposed? If it's going to be anything different than what would normally just be proposed for any development?
No, and again, I had the discussion with Brandon last week once we published the staff report, the items that were in there. So I haven't seen anything from him since that point, and maybe he can speak on that. I don't know if you've looked at that at all, Brandon, but I'm not aware of anything at this point.
Yes, I spoke with the developer on it, and they were putting together some, looking at some of their previous development covenants where they required landscaping and on each lot, and then they're also planning on having a landscape buffer there along East Hillcrest Avenue. I think Charlie requested that, and I passed that along, and they said they agreed there should be some landscaping. So that's in progress. I think we just spoke late last week, Charlie, so that's why we haven't gotten anything back. But on the next submittal, we'll have some landscaping requirements shown on there.
So there'll be a buffer on the east side of the property, you're saying?
On the south side.
Oh, south side.
On Hillcrest.
I totally missed. I need mayor's check, sorry.
Yeah, and that mainly fit in. You know, the buffer yard requirements are not required on this just because Hillcrest separates the industrial zoning to the south. But again, from an aesthetic thing, knowing that, you know, we're looking at Hillcrest Avenue in the future for possible reconstruction and just making that corridor a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. The trees are always a good thing, so.
Charlie, this is Joe. One of the things that I struggle with here is, you know, as you look at the street layout for this plan, there's already the jog in East Scenic just because the two existing stubs don't line up, and that's kind of a necessity. But when I look at North 7th Street, which comes from Hillcrest and is going to tie the growth to the north in with essentially a main connector there, to have that jog going up and then back down where essentially would be a straight shot if it just went all the way through. And if it were a straight shot, it would create essentially standard R3 lot sizes on that, what is that, western border as well. And the other thing I struggle with is that the T intersection there on the north side of that looks like it's within 200 feet of the intersection of East Scenic as well. So just the through traffic and congestion and cross traffic layout of how this is laid out, I struggle with quite a bit.
Okay. Yeah, and I know one of the things we'll have to look at in the construction documents and on the preliminary plat, I think one of the comments that was coming out is we tried to match up 7th Street on the north there with where it's currently shown on the preliminary plat for Quail Meadows. I've had a few people look at that just because it looks like that might not be lining up correctly. And Brandon, we haven't had this conversation yet because I'm waiting to get final review comments on the preliminary plat, but I know we had, you know, shared the approved preliminary plat with the engineer on there. And then when we showed the other engineer on the other thing, because we were actually seeing if we could get that jog off that north side of 7th, because it's a really strict jog on that thing. It seemed like that alignment might be off a little bit, but I haven't got final comment on that yet. And I think the comment that we'll probably submit back on the preliminary plat will be just to take a look at that again and make sure that that's lining up. So the other stuff, yeah, I get what you're saying on the road jogs there. I don't disagree with that, but again, it's dealing with a unique shaped parcel on this and then trying to get that alignment with 7th Street that goes south of Hillcrest, and then again getting that alignment on the north side as well.
Mr. Chairman, this is Al Ferris again. I want to talk a little bit about open space. It seems to me that some consideration for open space in this kind of development is mandatory because it says shall. That's a mandatory word in legal parlance. And I don't see anything in here about park or open space. And if you refer to page 51 of the comp plan we just recommended to the city council, it looks to me like there's a park identified in this area or the need for a park.
Yeah, Charlie, do you have any comment on that?
It does say that the language that's in there says shall be considered. And again, we always review that against our comp plan on if the consideration shall take place. Now I'm trying to get to the page on the comp plan that shows that, because I did look at that and I thought that the park space for this was actually to the south and then a little bit more to the north. But
Page 51, I don't think those stars are in the exact acre where the park is thought to be, but I thought they were sort of in the general vicinity. And it looks to me like this is in fact in the northeast corner of this property.
Yeah, Al, the direction we got from our consultant was that those stars are a general idea, not even a direct necessity. And so I think we're supposed to take those kind of things into consideration, depending on what parcel fits that the best.
Well, if not this parcel, what parcel?
I agree.
I guess what kind of consideration is made with that, Al, of the fact that it's going to have through the development to the north, it will have, well, and also on Hillcrest, it's going to have access to Somerset Trail, very close. I mean, there is recreation space very close by.
And where's the closest park? It's Dayton Park. How far is Dayton Park from here? It's a heck of a long ways, and I'll tell you, you're not going to send any 10-year-old kid from there to Dayton Park to play. One of the recommendations I noted that came from the Parks Board that is also in the comp plan that we just recommended talks about the necessity for the city to start being essentially more aggressive, working more to assure parks in those areas where they're parks deficient. This looks like one of those areas. I mean, you've got a development right next door to the east, another one that's going on right off to the northeast corner of this property.
Don't you think that's cost prohibitive for a developer on a 17-acre parcel, though?
Well,
I mean, this isn't an 80-acre.
Where's the 80-acre parcel that's going to be developed in that area?
I'm just saying, to me, it makes sense why that wouldn't have been a consideration with this, because it's between just where it's geographically located and the size of the parcel.
Yeah, well, honestly, I think the developer here is taking advantage of R5 to squeeze in a lot more lots on a small piece of land and ignoring the open space requirement. And that's the reason I'm concerned about the minimum lot size as setting a new standard, because we all know that once you okay it, somebody else is going to come along and say, well, you did it over there. Why can't I have 5,000 square foot or 6,000 square foot lots instead of 7,200, which seems to be the standard now?
So in a sense, what you're saying is, they're asking for the ability to squeeze a few more in there. And if we're letting that happen, why wouldn't there be, because they're sharing the cost burden over more lots, opportunity to leave some green space or park space back, correct?
Right, yeah.
And I'm not sure, excuse me, it goes so far as to say a park, but I'm referring back to what the R5 intent is. And I'm looking at page 59, and it talks about the statement of intent. And it says the intent's to permit an innovative design concept to be used in residential development where the deviation from conventional layout and development practices would result in a more appropriate use of land and subsequently promote the general health, welfare, safety, and morals of future residents. It's not the intent of this classification to permit unrelated mixes of use of development, but to permit the establishment of unified development with uses arranged manner compatible with one another, the site to be developed in the surrounding area. It is further the intent of this district to be such a development adhere to recognized principles of civic design, landscape use planning, and landscape architecture. So, yeah, I feel like this developer has pushed for an R5. It really hasn't shown us any proof of how he's betterment this development, at least through a landscaping, in site design. It just feels like a standard development, and I don't understand what I feel like I want more here if it's going to go to R5.
I hear you. Brandon, is this, we have several questions about intent, right, of R5 versus the R3 that's currently there. Can you speak to that at all? Like what Bob just brought up there?
Sure. First of all, I would start off by saying we have, D.R. Horton has been doing this same concept of these smaller lots all over the metro and all over the state. We've submitted this almost the same PUD packet with obviously a different lot layout for different properties, but with the same requirements. We have them going right now in Ankeny, Waukee, West Des Moines, and Bondurant. So those are all cities where they're going with the same idea of smaller lots. People are wanting smaller lots, get a more affordable home, and less into their lots, and they don't need the setbacks and the yards as much anymore. So that's kind of the way D.R. Horton is moving, and they're just going, looking at cities, and I think Indianola would be a great place to put this, but to make this work financially, they need to have these size of lots. They can't go in here and put in 65-foot lots and make it work. And then on top of that, the R3, if we required 7,200 square foot lots, I don't think we would be able to get 2 streets in here because the lot depths would be a lot deeper. So that means there would only be 1 street going through this project, which obviously would not work. If you only had 1 street going north-south, you'd cut your lots in half and you'd be down to, what, two lots an acre. And that kind of answers also with that North 7th Street, how you, somebody there requested, I'm not sure who it was, I wasn't able to follow, but requested that it go straight through. If it went straight through, then that street that we have called out as Street A to the east of it, we wouldn't be able to get that street in. So there's not much else you can do on this property besides put 2 streets going north-south and push the one to the one side and the other to the other side. Otherwise, I don't think anybody could put any single family in this. But yeah, this is the product that D.R. Horton's building around the state, and this is what they like to do. And there's been most cities have been for it. There've been 1 or 2 that haven't been for it, and I'll be honest with you, they just move on. They can't do the bigger lots. They have a system. They're the biggest builder in the country, and they're able to. They have a way of doing things, and this is the kind of product they want to put out there. So, if I had to go back and tell them you guys want 7,200 square foot lots with the R3 and 60-foot wide lots, I don't think they would move forward. But if there was something you guys wanted more landscaping or something like that, I think they'd be up. They're always up for something like that. But the lot layout, they can't go much lower than the density that we have here. They actually wanted 40-foot lots here, but we ended up bumping it up to 50 because we thought it'd be more favorable. But we're going down to 40-foot lots in a lot of the other cities. So,
Brandon,
but yeah,
gosh, let me jump in here real quick. I think for the most part, right, I kind of understand the density development, or at least the thought process there. I know a large part of Bob's question, some of the stuff from Al, is your landscaping, park, open space, and stuff like that. Is there any part of the R5 PUD is to betterment of the area is there any consideration for that type of stuff in here with some of the stuff you're asking for, like the 5,000 square foot lots? I know you said you were going to put some buffer along Hillcrest, but more so than that.
Would the city purchase the parkland and be a city park, or are you just talking about dedicating open space?
Yeah, that's something we'd have to talk with our park board about. I don't have any idea on budget and what their fiscal capabilities are at this point, so I can't speak on that. But
I just think with this, like Charlie said, with this narrow piece of property, it'd be kind of hard to fit a parkland on there. And then if you do, you can't even be cutting back on that density, which would be doing that same thing. Landscaping, I don't know what other recommendations you guys would have, but if there's some recommendations, I could take that to D.R. Horton and see if they would be up for it. I would say that if they were, when I pass this along to them, what they would say is what they're bringing in the PUD is they're going to come in here and build a lot of houses and get a lot more residents coming in here. That would be kind of their selling point, more than a landscape or a park. They're going to come in here and try to match, or improve more than any other developer or builder that's coming out here. They're going to be building a lot of houses and tax incentives and all that stuff. So that'd probably be their sell on what they're trying to get out of this.
I guess what I would say, just working with people that have purchased similar type properties in other areas of the metro, what I would say would meet that R5 standard of being innovative is it creates an area where, all around this, there's going to be much higher priced lots and more expensive housing, but the innovation and design creates the opportunity for affordable housing. So that, so that adjacent to the YMCA, it's not just $400,000 to $500,000 homes. So there's the opportunity for homes under $300,000 for Indianola residents.
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Yeah, this is Sarah Ritchie. I'm in agreement with Misty. Yeah, I want to call out two things that she has said that in addition to, this is an opportunity for us to say, okay, what is our future forward plan? And it is probably smaller lots. People don't necessarily need a lot of lawn to care for. In addition to the location, the Y is right there and it is easy to get to the trails. And so I don't want to specifically say it's just parks that we were talking about. We were talking about the ability for recreational areas, because we've been talking about the school play. It's not just the playgrounds, it's the track and field, it's the open spaces, it's the golf courses that we've been talking about. So it's not just about a playground area. There is access to green space out here.
Anybody else have any thoughts or comments here right now? Otherwise, we will open up to public comment, hear a little bit from the public on this one again. We had quite a few emails come in.
Josh, this is Joe. One more comment. I'm doing a rough count. I mean, I'm actually surprised how many lots in here are over the 7,200 already. It's really just the interior lots that are under, and they're not under by that much. I guess just by rough count, there's looks like 40 or 41 or 42 of the lots that are already over 7,200. And for example, the chunk of interior lots between the two interior roads, which are 50-foot lots right now, if one of those lots were removed and it was reallocated, so they lost one lot in that whole area, they get to this, it looks like they get to the 7,200 already. So they lose one lot of density and they're already there. And so I agree with Misty's comments about creating a opportunity for a different price point. But I think we could do that already and stick within the R3 guidelines from what I'm seeing and keep that 7,200 square foot threshold intact and not create a new precedence for it.
So Joe, you're saying lose one off of each row?
Yeah, it looks like one on the approximately one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it looks like they'd have to lose 6 lots. And then when you go to the different areas that are all under 7,200, but I mean, you start counting the number that are already over, it's all those interior 50-foot perfectly rectangular ones that are approximately 123, 128 by 50 are the ones that are under it. The rest of them are almost all over it. And so just a reallocation of just those interior lots and you're almost there already. I'm struggling with what the purpose of going to R5 when the R3 guidelines could be, from what I can see, met here, unless I'm missing something.
R3 minimum lot width is 60 feet. So we're at 50-foot minimum lot width.
Got it.
We have a change.
Yeah, that would put them at 58 feet. 58 by 124 would put them right at 72 feet. That's what I was trying to get to.
Mr. Chairman, this is Al Ferris. Just kind of a final thought from me on this is, again, referring to the comp plan that we just recommended to the city council, page 70. One of the lessons there is that we don't need any more lower level affordable housing. That's in excess. I know it's hard to be consistent here, but that's one of the reasons I asked the question about how much you hew to the comp plan. Because if you hew to the comp plan strictly in that area, you have an excess of housing that's under $200,000.
These would be more than 200,000, I would imagine.
On a 5,000 square foot lot?
Yes. You can't build a new construction home for less than that.
Misty, you
Well,
this came up earlier when Charlie and I were speaking. I think a lot of that inventory would be some of those like 850 to 1,000 square foot ranches and some of your split foyers in the older sections of town make up a lot of that inventory currently. Or even if these were $180,000 to $200,000 homes, it's a whole different type, right? You see, as the real estate residential expert on the board here, right?
Well, I mean, it's a difference of affordable housing that's 60, 70 years old versus new construction that has the energy efficiency and all of that. I mean, we have an excess of that older inventory, but it's not the same opportunity for a young family.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just get to this. We're going to do some public comment here. Again, the phone number to call in is 515-961-9448. We do have some folks here in the room. I'm not entirely sure how the call-in is going to go, if we can place people on hold if someone's speaking. So I think we can. So if we'll figure this out as we go. Again, 515-961-9448. Is there anybody in the room that would like to speak to this topic? All right. Your name and address.
Yes, I would. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Ross Dale, 615 East Scenic Valley Avenue.
Okay.
And I am here representing myself along with our homeowners association at Summercrest Hills, Plat 5. We have 12 members and we oppose the decision here and the concept in general, and for the purpose of that's described in the letters that we submitted earlier. I assume everyone got a copy of that. So, but I would like to kind of review some of the things, and I appreciate some of the comments because they support our position on the opposition of this development. probably one of the primary things that we're concerned about is the unity and the consistency of the neighborhood. This development brings in a completely different configuration of housing. And of course, a different clientele as well. The density brings in, and particularly when you complete these streets, we're going to have just on our street only, because it'll be the main Farrell to the north, at least until that other project is done. We'll probably add another between 100, 150 homes of traffic pattern on that street. And really, Scenic Valley doesn't even go anywhere. I mean, it goes into a stop sign, and then you have to go through the commercial areas. But it's not like Quail Ridge, which or Timber Ridge, that would go straight directly towards the stoplight and would take a lot of pressure off. So it goes through residential, which creates a kind of a health hazard there, safety hazard. But I think the first entry we talked about, and someone already read it, is the intent is of the class zoning is not to permit unrelated mixture of the development, and it really it certainly does. Yeah, they're houses, but there's a whole different configuration of those homes. And for instance, the Quail Meadows, their covenants restricts about 1,600 square foot per home. The development going into the north also will be a minimum of I think it's 1,650. And so we have a completely different class of structures that's tucked right in this neighborhood, which is totally inconsistent with the zoning or the ordinance, actually, the language of the ordinance that's existing already. We mentioned the density. The question about green space comes up. I think there was some discussion about that with parks and so on, but there is a minimum of 10% requirement of green space as they develop that. I'm not sure that that allows for that either. When you look at the lot size in Zone 5 does allow for a 50-foot front, but it does not designate where that 50 feet is measured. The proposal suggests it's measured at the setback. We talked earlier about the measurement is just inside the sidewalk. So I think that there are several of those lots that don't meet that 50-foot requirement. About 12 actually that doesn't meet that. So when we look at, there's a number of issues here. First of all, just the violation or the out of compliance with your own ordinances, where this doesn't meet that. The density is maybe on an average or a means average, when you average all the neighborhoods around, is very similar. But when you look at the density of this unit itself, it's quite higher. And when you look at the type of structures, we don't know what they are. We'd like to see that plan. We'd like to see the ideas of what they're planning to build and what structures they are. But we already know that there's a number of them that will be slab grade, and that's really out of consistency with what's in the neighborhood, not just in our position, but all of the homes around it. It's like, you know, square peg in a round hole, more or less. So we'd like to object to that. We'd like to have you consider that. And the other idea is the type of housing, and when you get into younger families or whatever that's going to be fitting into this category, we have a senior home that is in that development, They have their own walkways. And there's a lot of older people that do walk on those sidewalks within that development. And the risk of bicycles, younger kids and all, puts them at risk. A lot of them have walkers, have canes. And so I think that, that in itself would lead for more of that risk for those people as well. So I would like to kind of sum it up this way. And I would agree with some of the arguments that have been made. Not the need for small postage stamp lots, but rather to fit into the community and the consistency of what is already there in the existence. Not only that, but the planning and the development of that. So this development really is out of compliance in a number of ways with your own ordinances. I know there was a little kind of a sales pitch from the developer there, but I know that also the quality of construction, the reputation of the builder, and a lot of the things that are on record on the Better Business Bureau and the number of resources would suggest that the quality of the construction and the risk of the buyer could really be, needs to be in consideration. And you have to ask the question, is this really what we want in our community? And, or is this certainly the spot for it? It sounds like there's really kind of working hard to try to fit what they want to do into this space. And it would seem that maybe there are some other locations that might fit in an easier way. But the safety of the neighborhood, the increased traffic patterns that are going to be coming through, at least until those other streets are on, it's going to be a terribly increased amount of traffic, which does put safety at risk as well in the neighborhood. And the efficiency of the traffic flow is just not there. There have been other developments that have been denied, very similar ones. I think that by approving this one would certainly be inconsistent with the previous decisions on similar projects. So I would really consider that as well. There's probably more that we could discuss on this, but I appreciate your consideration on the matter, and really would encourage you to rule in our favor of denying this zoning change.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to speak to this one or on the phone? This is your chance. We're going to give it just another little bit here to make sure. Okay. Feel good, Charlie. We're going to move on. All right, Commission, we've heard from the public. As mentioned, we do have correspondence from Mr. Dale and the Summercrest Hills Homeowners Association, as well as several other folks. Is there any other discussion to be had here or questions?
I think Joe brought up a great point that if we're so close to an R3, is a possibility. I mean, it kind of puts all this controversy with this R5 and the density to bed. And I guess I'd be asking if the developer would be willing to look at a scheme that stays within the R3. But when Joe talks, doesn't sound like we're talking about losing too many lots, but maybe we're off here. I guess I'd like to hear some input, maybe from the civil engineer.
Brandon?
Yeah, sure. Well, just going from a 50 to a 60-foot lot, I mean, that's about 20% more lot. So you would lose about 20% of the lots, just in general, by going to that R3. I did, just while we were on the phone here, text Josh Moulton at DR Horton, and he says the price point will be 240 to 260 for these houses. I know we asked about that earlier, but to answer some of these density questions, I heard the complaints about having a lot of density. This is zoned R3 though, so we are a lot less than the density if we were to go and put townhome units in here. We are actually not only not putting in townhomes, but we're duplexes, sixplexes or twins. We're going all the way down to single family. So considering the zoning, I think we're on the far side, the opposite side of being too dense, just because we're doing a single family product. But when looking at the big picture of the R3, I think our density isn't near as high as it could be. And I think the neighbors, I didn't catch where he was from, but I assume he's probably in that neighborhood to our east. I assume they would much rather have this product than a bunch of townhomes and apartments backed up to their houses, which we could do with the R3. I'm looking at the code, I think, if I'm reading that right. So I guess those are some responses to the comments we've heard.
Yeah, and I hear you, Brandon, on that, and it's a fair point. We're probably not going to argue out preferences tonight of all that, but I hear what you're saying. One question I had while you're talking is, you said about the 5,000 earlier, and that was kind of a safety number, so things can shift.
Sure.
But again, looking at it, we're over 6,000 on quite a few of these. I don't think it would be unreasonable to amend this to a 6,000 square foot minimum just to help hold that. Is that, you short of not being as concerned, do you see any challenges with that from your guys' perspective?
No, I don't see any problems with it, and I think we could hit that 6,000 minimum if that's what you guys are looking for. We could meet that, and I think we could do that. Yep.
I think that, at least from my perspective, speaks to the point of precedence on 5,000. It helps at least a little bit, just as a discussion point.
Brandon, this is Joe Butler. I made the comment about being so close to R3, and I understand your math, the 20%, but 40 of the lots already are over 72. So we're actually talking about the difference between, 40 and 72 lots, I believe. So it'd only be the potential loss of the ones that are under 7,200 already.
No, but those lots are all less than 60 feet wide, and R3 has a minimum 60-foot wide lot.
Correct.
So those would all have to be wider.
So
Right.
Yeah.
really quick, I think what Joe's trying to say is can we hit the minimum lot size of the R3 in this? It would still require the R5 because of the lot width, because it doesn't sound like you can go down too much or up much more on that. But I think the question is can we get the minimum lot size at least?
That is correct, Charlie.
Okay, I'm following you now.
I mean, that's kind of where I'm coming from too, Joe. I agree that it's a big jump from where we've been down to 5,000 and opening that can of worms potentially. And is there some compromise here to widen these up a little bit, broaden them?
I shouldn't have agreed to that 6,000 so fast. I should have held harder on that. I thought we were going from there. So I jumped up to 6, and then now we're wanting to jump right up to 72.
Brandon, you bring up a good point about the R3 and the multifamily aspect of that. A lot of our R3 in Indianola, even though it's zoned R3, has been developed all single family. And so a lot of people in town don't understand that they're in an R3 area that could have multifamily just because they have single family all around them. So I appreciate the single family aspect of this development. I truly do. I'm just trying not to set a precedence that's gonna steamroll into something that goes against our current practices that have been implemented and been successful to date.
Sure. Yep, I'm following you.
So help me understand, how does it open a can of worms or set a precedent when we review an area and determine based on what is laid out for that specific area?
Mike, the reason I bring that up, Misty, is because it's not impossible for this parcel to be developed R3. So,
Right.
so if we are saying that we're going to say this is okay to be R5, we don't have a leg to stand on that would have said that it was impossible to develop R3. I mean, we're arbitrarily choosing that R5 is a better use for this than R3 because it could be developed R3. There's ways to do it. It's totally capable. So what I'm saying is that because we do have a choice, if we're choosing that a lesser square footage than 7,200 square feet is okay, we don't have that unanimous reason that we did it other than we arbitrarily chose it. And so that's why I'm saying we're setting a precedence going forward that's going to be really hard to argue against for someone else that wants it as well.
So meaning if it was something that was approved, it would be because we saw an advantage of single family being put in here over multifamily. I guess I'm just.
It's us saying that we're okay with a smaller lot size. Whether it's single family or multifamily, I think the lot size is a big deal. And I think from all the comments we've received from the public and the continuity of the other area, whether it's a $240,000 house or a $400,000 house, and I get it, I'm a developer, I get how number of lots work within row, I get it. Like it's an economic thing, it's a quantitative thing, I totally get it. But whether a developer decides to build that 240, I mean, if we're talking about eliminating 6-7 lots out of 72, the impact is less on that size parcel than removing it on a smaller size parcel as well and making lots bigger. So I just think we have to be really careful that if we're saying that 7,200 square feet is not necessarily the minimum anymore, we've got to be okay with that going forward. There's a lot of people that will use that to their advantage and leverage in the future and bring this forward on a regular basis. It's a popular thing, and I would bet we will see more of it if we say this one's okay.
And what ultimately decides if a developer does that successfully?
Does what?
I mean, it's if their neighborhood is successful.
So Misty, I think what you're saying is if they come in here and they do this on 6,000 square foot lots and they saw development, everyone's happy, is that a success, right? Like, doesn't that define?
It means that our market demanded it.
Yeah.
And that's why other people would do that. And I understand, like, I totally understand why there's fear from neighbors of, making an assumption that it's a low quality, cheap product next to their beautiful $300,000 townhomes and $400,000 single family homes. But I mean, where this is located, I think it makes sense, and it makes sense why developers are doing this in other areas successfully. And I think that if Indianola wants to be seen as a community that is friendly to development and friendly to what the market's asking for, we need to be open-minded to this.
I personally agree with you, Misty, and that's why I asked about the 6,000 square foot compromise.
Yeah.
I think we do, I hear a lot of what Al brought up is that we just ignore the comp plan, and a lot of what the comp plan is that we want to be friendly to development. And this is part of a newer, well, it's a new reality in residential development, right?
It's the trend of what I mean, that's why urban centers are more popular for younger buyers. And I mean, it's that traditional giant lot isn't what all people are looking for now, because they don't spend their time outside in their yard. They're with their kids at a million different sports and activities, and they don't have time to take care of their yard.
Yeah. I hear you.
But we would still require them to take care of their yard.
Yeah, I hope you guys are
Get away from that.
Make sure you say that into the mic, Charlie. Is there any further questions or discussion here, Commission? quiet time, that would mean that you'll be
This is
time to-
Aaron Freeberg. I just have a quick question on, at what point in the process does it become evaluating the creative use of space or the design standards? That because the comp plan we talked about that being a priority along with that green space. It's like, I can see both sides. Unique development for young families at a great price point is awesome, but we just went through all those. I mean, how many meetings have we talked about the comp plan? I just want to make sure it's the right fit for Indianola.
Yeah, I mean, and
So
that's,
Charlie, you tell me when we get to that process,
so
or who does.
you're talking more of what will these houses look like, or I just want to make sure I'm understanding you.
Sure, what they look like, or I mean, there was a little bit of talk on the landscaping and all those kinds of things. And just, is that something that we would, as we're making a motion now, put those kinds of priorities in there?
Yes.
Or, areas of concentration to go back and reevaluate that it's not going to look maybe like exactly what we have here, that there's going to be the designated areas of landscaping or something.
Yeah, so the recommendation that I had in there was that, this goes forward with those additions in there, and then council would ultimately review those additions. So one option the commission does have is to say, hey, we want to see the landscaping, what that's going to look like before our next, or before we make a formal recommendation. Now, on what the houses will look like, we don't have anything in place on there. We don't have any residential design standards in place right now. We do look at that on commercial on some of our major corridors. But as now this comp plan goes forward to council, the hope would be next step is looking at amending our zoning standards, looking at amending our site planning standards, our subdivision standards to become a little bit more modern and maybe include some more requirements for that stuff. I'll even, I'll ask Brandon a little bit as well too, is, if we were to bring this back next month, if that's an option for the commission, if that's something you want to entertain, maybe is it possible to see what some of these houses would look like? So you have an idea of what you're approving. The only caveat I would point out on that is, we're approving a zoning change on this point in the development plan. You'll probably be looking at the actual preliminary plat next month as well if this goes forward. The only caveat is they could plat this whole thing, sell it off to somebody else, and then you're looking at a different house. So, but again, at the same time, that the chances of that happen could be slim, and you could at least get an idea of maybe what some of their concepts look like. But again, I'll let Brandon discuss if that's an option. But I would assume that they've got some common elevations that you could review if that was something you wanted to do.
Sure. Yeah, we could send you some elevations. Yeah, absolutely. We probably wouldn't want to wait another month, though, if we could, if there's any way to get around that. But maybe we send some elevations and we discuss it at the preliminary plat or something like that.
Is it possible to tie it to that, Charlie? You said, or would you even really tie it, or is it more of just a good thing?
Yeah, I think at that point it would be more of a feel good thing on the preliminary plat, because on the preliminary plat, we're not looking at individual plans or anything like that. We're strictly looking at lot layouts and detention and streets and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, if it's something that you want to review as part of the development plan that's here, that has to be done as part of that. We don't have that obviously tonight. So, again, that's something that's up to the commission ultimately, if it's something that you want to review before you make your recommendation.
My only thought is we've never required that before. Like if you look at the developments that I would say are somewhat similar to like on the east side towards the high school, we've never asked for what do the houses look like.
Yeah, and it's not too common either to do that. Again, we do that with a lot of commercial projects on some of our corridors, but residential, we don't do it too often. And, and unless you're getting into multifamily, larger apartment complex, but single family and duplex, typically you don't see elevations as part of the approval. That's something that just gets reviewed as part of the building permit.
I feel like more of the intent with this development is how the public space improvements are handled, the landscaping, around the development to me is what's key. And that's, again, that's something I mentioned before. I think if we were to approve this plan, I think we could make it contingent upon the staff's review and comments. They know the intent. I don't think we'd have to have it come back to us for approval for the landscaping, but.
So to recap here, as we work through this, let me get to my other screen. We always have 4 options available to us. Staff has recommended option 2, which is approving the rezoning request and development plan with the following conditions. The development plan be updated to show minimum setbacks of 25 feet in the front, 30 feet in the rear, and 8 feet on the sides, plus a minimum lot area of 7,200 square feet for lots that are adjacent to the boundaries of the existing lot. And item 2, the development plan be updated to include landscaping standards that will be included for each lot, as well as perimeter landscaping that will be included along the south side of the development. To Bob's last point there, Charlie, that's one that can be, the staff has to approve of that, correct? That landscape plan.
Yeah, if that's something you want us to definitely do, we can review that before it goes to council for sure.
So that was staff's recommendation with those 2 we've discussed. Well, quite a few things here as well, right? One, being the lot size increase. Here's where we're at. Further discussion or time for a motion? Trying to watch all the screens here.
So can I just ask for one clarification? So in the recommendation, we have the plus a minimum lot area of 7,200 square feet for lots that are adjacent to the boundaries of the existing lot. Circling back to our conversation between 5,000 and 6,000 and now 7,200, summarize for me what our recommendation would be if we said yes with 1. Is it 72 or is it 6? Is it 5?
Right now, it's 7,200 for the ones that are touching the existing lots on the outside. The developer has asked for a 5,000 square foot minimum for the rest of the development. Is how they've submitted it. We can make a recommendation to increase that to. We discussed 6,000 because there are no lots smaller than that. And then as well as just trying to make the whole thing R3 compliant from the 7,200 square foot aspect. We discussed that as well.
Yep, okay.
Does that help, Sarah?
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly where my mind is going, is that, yeah.
So this would require us adjusting these perimeter lots then?
Yes, yeah, that's a requirement of the R5 district.
Yeah.
So really the main discussion is those perimeter ones are all going to be 7,200 minimum. It's the interior ones, how they stay. And again, right now they're all as they're laid out currently. I think the smallest one is about 6160. It looks like. Okay. Discussion. Okay, I would entertain a motion. Anybody's ready?
This is Joe Butler. I'll make a motion. I would make a motion to approve the rezoning per alternate 2 with conditions that show a minimum setback of 25 foot in the front, 30 in the rear, 8 on the sides, plus a minimum lot area of 7,200 square feet for the lots that are adjacent to the boundaries of the existing lots, and 6,000 square feet for all interior lots, and a restricted single family use.
did you want to include the landscaping in there? Did I miss that? Making sure I'm following along here properly.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, the landscaping is going to come forward on plat documents or construction documents, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be part of that. Our recommendation was to include it as part of the development plan as well.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so just so we're clear here, we have the recommendation to approve with option two, the caveat or the change being the development plan to be updated to show the minimum setbacks of 25 feet in the front, 30 feet in the rear, 8 feet on the sides, plus a minimum lot area of 7,200 square feet for lots adjacent to the boundaries of the existing lot, 6,000 square feet minimum for the interior lots, and a restriction to single-family homes, correct?
That is correct. And per Charlie's comments, the recommendation number 2 as well with the landscape standards.
Okay, we have first and a second. Is there any further discussion before we take a vote on this one?
And really quick, Bob, that was your second, right?
Yes, it was.
I thought so. Just making sure.
Thank you guys for hanging in with us on technology. Technology is fun. If there's no further discussion, this is our last chance. Courtney?
Jeremy Freeble,
Yes.
Sarah Ritchie,
Yes.
Josh Rabe,
Yes.
Misty Soldwish,
Yes.
Joe Butler,
Yes.
Al Ferris,
No.
Aaron Freeberg,
Yes.
Bob Ormsby.
Yes.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you all for your hard work on this. And we will keep on moving. I believe we're down to the last item on the agenda here. Consider recommendation on request
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
from Barry Countess of Woda Cooper Development, Inc. to rezone property located on Outlot X of the replat of the Hillcrest Industrial Park Plat 1, except parcels B and C, from the M2 General Industrial Zoning District to the R4 Multifamily Residential Zoning District. Charlie?
Yeah, so really quick, this is a 3.5 acre piece of land that is being requested to rezone, currently located in the M2 General Industrial Zoning District. The request is to rezone to the R4 Multifamily Residential Zoning District to facilitate a proposed development of a 2-story 50-unit apartment complex meant for households 55 years of age and older. We've included an analysis there of this project. Did note that on March 9th of 2020, the applicant did host a neighborhood meeting at the Indianola Y. It seems like forever ago with everything that's going on, but that was right before we all kind of locked down into a quarantine here. So did have a good meeting there. The intent of that meeting, as the commission's aware, we did have an application that the neighborhood just to the south of here strongly opposed, the Acadian development. So we had suggested to the developer to reach out to this neighborhood on the interim of this project to explain what was going on. And explain the project, and they did do that on March 9th. So did note that the comprehensive plan does designate this property as light industrial, but it should be noted that the boundary line between the mixed residential and the light industrial is located on the south border of the proposed area to be rezoned. As I noted in the comp plan discussion, that the future land use map is a policy guide whose boundaries are not meant to be exact and more static lines. So even though that this is shown as the industrial, moving that just a little bit to the north to include there, and the applicant noted this as well. If this is used as a multifamily site, it could serve as a really good transition for the residential uses to the south and the industrial uses to the north. The site does provide a 15-inch sanitary sewer gravity main on the west side of the rear property, Did note too, the water mains in this area, they get a little bit funky, but hopefully I explained it well. There's an 8-inch water line on the west side of North 9th Street that is located just south of this property. That water line does transition to the east side of North 9th. It does become a 12-inch water main through there as it moves north through the industrial area. So typically you'll see smaller diameter water mains for residential uses, and when you get into industrial areas, they do upsize a little bit, but that transition from that 8-inch to that 12-inch really takes place just adjacent to this property into that residential, or excuse me, into that industrial area. So while normally we would look at this and say, hey, yeah, we have an industrial zoning classification, and we have utilities in this area that support that industrial zoning classification. Since we're right on that border of that residential, you know, staff's opinion was that it is an appropriate transition to get to make that a multifamily use. We're not talking about something that's in the middle of the industrial park against something that's right on the edge. And even if this was located on the north portion of this property, I think our opposition would probably be a little bit higher than it is on this one. So because of that, we are recommending approval as requested. Be happy to answer any questions on this one. I know the applicants are both here and have been here for 2 hours, so I'll probably let them talk too, just to make sure that they get the most out of this as they're here. So, but for now, any questions from my standpoint, I'd be happy to answer them.
And I'll just say, I represent the seller in the sale of the property, and so I'll recuse myself from voting.
Anybody have any questions for Charlie here on this one? Charlie, I have a question, I guess, right out of the gate. We, as you mentioned before, had a project come up recently to the south, right of this one, and there was major traffic concerns, the talks of traffic study and all that. There was no mention of that from the neighborhood meeting or public comment on this at all, anybody?
Nope, we never, we didn't get any public comment on this one. One note I would make on this, so when we had the neighborhood meeting, our notifications, as pointed out in the staff report, we do a 200-foot radius around the area to be rezoned. That 200-foot radius didn't touch any of the residential uses to the south. However, when we had the neighborhood meeting, we made sure that they were all informed. Barry, I know you're on here, you could probably remind me, but I want to say it was something like 150 to 200 letters that we sent out to the neighborhood for this neighborhood meeting. And I think in the end, we had 15 to 20 people there. But the traffic study, so the recommendation from the commission on the last Kading proposal was that a traffic impact analysis be done. You never got a chance to review that. It was something that we reviewed before council. The traffic impact analysis that was done for the Kading development, and I'm gonna summarize this as best as I can, but it showed that with that 31-foot back-to-back road that's in there, for the most part, it was operating as it should. You know, obviously there was a lot of traffic moving through there, and then it also looked at, you know, hey, what happens when full build out of the transportation network in the city takes place, and you know that would alleviate some congestion along the roads. And then it also called for some things that could change. For example, there's school buses that go through on North 9th, and they were picking up kids along North 9th rather than going into the developments. That was holding up traffic. And there was also some concern with where the mailboxes were placed in that area too, and how that was holding up traffic. Last thing it looked at was that intersection of Iowa and North 9th, and really fixing that intersection. One of the recommendations, I think, was to make that a 4-way stop at some point in the future. And that would really help alleviate some of that traffic back up on North 9th, because right now, North 9th being that North and South Street, the cars back up, especially around school time there, because there's no traffic stopping east and west on Iowa. So it's really hard to find those turning movements to get through there. So ultimately that analysis was done, and it did show that right now it's operating, if you're familiar with traffic studies, it essentially gives it a grade, A, B, C, D, or F. On the level of service, and it was operating as a level of service A. So it was getting the highest grade it could.
Perfect. Anybody else have any questions for Charlie on this one?
This is Joe Butler, more of a comment than a question. I think one of the most challenging things about planning and zoning is transitioning from any residential use to any industrial use, and finding that appropriate buffer is a great thing, and this solves that, and is a good use transitioning from any residential use to the south to an industrial use to the north with a medium density use. So I think it's a good use of the parcel.
Barry, hi. Thank you for hanging in here this whole time. Charlie mentioned you earlier. Sounds like you guys had a nice meeting.
My pleasure. My pleasure. As Charlie was noting, it seemed like it was a lifetime ago when we had the neighborhood meeting. It was 1 week before the apocalypse, and Indianola was obviously my last city I got to go to before I was grounded. But Nick's on the line as well. He and I are just very excited at the possibility of being one of your neighbors there in Indianola.
Hey, we sure appreciate it, and appreciate you guys working on this and hanging in here this long. So, commission members, I literally have 17 minutes left on my laptop battery and no way to plug it in here. So, just going to throw that out there. Does anybody have any questions for? I've turned my screen as dim as it will go. I'm now squinting into my screen here. Does anybody have any questions for Barry, Nick, or Charlie?
You could always go stand 6 feet behind Charlie.
I was looking around like, okay, what can I do to get away with this? And so, yeah, thank you. This is the chance for questions. I personally agree with Joe. I think it's a nice use of buffering. Yep. All right. With that being said, thank you for the reminder, Charlie. We do need to have some public comment on this. The phone number is 515-961-9448. Anybody can call in on that? Is there anybody left in the audience? There's not many left. You've hung in the whole time. We'll give it just a few seconds here for anybody that wants to call in for public comment. Okay, I think we're probably good there. The phone hasn't rung yet tonight, but you know it's working. We tested it. If there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion on this item.
This is Joe Butler. I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning as submitted.
This is Jeremy. I'll second it.
Jeremy, all right, we have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion for the commission? All right, Courtney.
Sarah Ritchie,
Yes.
Josh Rabe,
Yes.
Joe Butler,
Yes.
Al Ferris,
Yes.
Aaron Freeberg,
Yes.
Bob Ormsby,
Yes.
Jeremy Friedel.
Yes.
Perfect. Nice job. Thank you guys for hanging with us, Barry, Nick. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing this move forward. All right, agenda item 8. Is there any special comments from commission members at this time?
Just a general comment, and this is Joe Butler. Real quick, I know this is a new environment for us, and just with the public comments, if we have to do this again with the public comments that did come through, was wondering if there's a way to gather all those and send them out to the commission based on the agenda item, versus just forwarding them every time. And I know, Charlie, you were getting some late and we're trying to get them to us, but if there's any way to even like set up folders or something that have all those public comments in by agenda item, it'd be a lot easier to track.
Yeah, so really quick on that, my thought was this weekend we got quite a few in, and I didn't want to inundate the commission at 4 o'clock today with all of the comments, so I was trying to spread it out a little bit to get you some time to review it. But if the commission would rather just get those all in one package, for example, and if that package is, at what time on a certain day, I have no problem with that. So Josh is joining behind me now. But yeah, no, I understand that completely. I didn't realize we'd get so many more in after yesterday either, but then I could. yeah, I'll do a better job of organizing them in the future as well too, for however long this takes. So comment noted. And
even if you do have to forward them on periodically, putting in the title or something, just what each one is tied to, which agenda item would go.
Yep, not a problem at all.
Perfect. Anybody else? Charlie, do you have any comments?
I'll go really quick. You've got all the reports on there, so if there's any questions on any of the reports, I'd be happy to answer them. We did get the Metro building permit report a couple weeks ago, and I included that as part of Ryan's weekly email for anybody that gets that. But I just wanted to point out on that, through this pandemic, we had a really excellent month in March for single family. I'm actually surprised at how well it's doing. Metro wide, when we look at the entire Des Moines metro area, March of 2020 saw about 100 more building permits issued for single family than March of 2019. And year to date 2020, we're at about 200 more than we were year to date in 2019. So the market's staying strong for now. Who knows what will happen once we get through all of this, but that's good to see. On our development report, we're still seeing most of our projects move through. We've seen a delay on a few things, but nothing too crazy, nothing to be concerned of. Nobody's pulled out of any current projects that we have going on. So we're staying strong for now through all of this. So that's a good thing. Second thing was on the ISU workshops. Obviously, those have now all gone to webinars, and I included that in your packet. So again, if there's anybody that wants to attend any of those dates, let us know. Obviously now, we don't have to find that date in the metro area or in Oskaloosa. We can do any of those dates. So if any of you want to attend those, let me know and we'll get you signed up. On the comp plan, again, I commend the commission. You guys did a great job going through that for the last 4 months, and hopefully council adopts that coming here, and we're working under that and then working through all the implementation measures on that as well. So last thing I would point, tomorrow is Administrative Professionals Day. So I want to thank Courtney for all she does and everything that she also does for the commission here as well too, and spending 2.5 hours on a Tuesday night recording the minutes for this meeting. So just wanted to point that out, and that's all I have. So
I would
Thank you, Courtney.
Good job, Courtney.
No problem. Hey, I get to get out of the house. I actually showered today for the occasion.
Thank you for that. That being said, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second the motion. This is Sarah.
There's the next two there. All those in favor say yes, aye, whatever, aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Hanging in with this.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.